Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hello, Cobbs Corner family, and welcome to another episode of Cobbs Corner, your one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. If this is your first time listening, then welcome, and to my returning listeners, welcome back to the Cobbs Corner. It's been a while. Welcome back. This is the 97th episode. 97 episodes. We are so close to Night of Champions and to my 100th episode. Shout out to my listeners in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. It's almost Riyadh season. 97. This is the 97th episode of Cobbs Corner. So thank you for listening and sharing this broadcast. In today's episode, we are leaving Kansas and following the Yellow Brick Road. And we are off to see the wizard in number 10, The Wizard of Oz. Stay tuned. So, The Wizard of Oz, this movie came out in the year 1939. Now, 1939 was a big year for Hollywood. A lot of the movies that are on this AFI Top 100 list came out that year. Besides Wizard of Oz, we also saw Gone with the Wind came out that year, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which I've talked about in a previous episode. So, go check out my review of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I have not done Gone with the Wind yet, but Gone with the Wind is number 6 on the AFI Top 100, so I'm definitely going to get to that episode definitely going to get to that movie in a future episode. And it was a really big year. This was known as like the golden age of Hollywood, and at this time, like, color was very new. At that time, a lot of movies were still filmed entirely in black and white. I've also heard that film was expensive at the time. Film was expensive, and color film, like Technicolor, was very much new at that time. I think even the movie Singin' in the Rain, which I did a while ago, that movie is also on the AFI Top 100. I know Singin' in the Rain came out in like the 1950s, and that was one of the earlier uses of color. One of the earlier uses of color on film. But this movie specifically, The Wizard of Oz, the book was written by L. Frank Baum in the year 1900, and technically this movie is not the first surviving like actual film adaptation of the novel. There were a few other adaptations during the silent era. There was one in like 1910, another in 1925, and maybe a few others that have been lost to time. But this one is regarded as the very first adaptation of the Wizard of Oz. Even though it's technically not the first, it's regarded as an original, and the success of this movie, it spawned countless other spin-offs like the Return to Oz, The Wiz, which is definitely a DVD that I burned a hole in growing up. Like, that was my favorite. That was my favorite movie when I was little. Let me know in the comments, should I do an original versus remake comparison of The Wizard of Oz to The Wiz? Let me know if that's something that you guys want to see in the near future. But, The Wiz, and there was the movie Oz the Great and Powerful, and even now Wicked. Wicked, which came out last year, and the Wicked Part 2 is coming out later this year. So, but really, this film was the film that started it all. And the behind the scenes on this movie, like the movie's existence, is a testament to the resiliency and the perseverance of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer as a studio, and Victor Fleming as a director, and just the cast and crew and everybody. Like the stuff that happened behind the scenes, from the Tin Man having, I think he was like blood poisoning. He got some sort of disease from the makeup, because they actually painted his skin, silver. A lot of the costumes were very difficult to wear. the lion's costume was an actual hide from a real life lion. And, you know, again, the costumes are very difficult to wear. This is before CGI. This is before any of this new fancy schmancy technology that we have today. All live action. And, you know, this movie is definitely regarded as one of the greatest of all time. There's a reason it's number 10 on the AFI Top 100. But it just made the top 10. And you look at the competition as well, too, so I mean, this movie, we'll see in the trivia that it was nominated for a couple of films. Well, it was nominated for a few Oscars, but the films that it lost to, you know, the competition, like I said, 1939 was one of the greatest years in the history of cinema. I don't know if it was the greatest. It's one of the greatest. It's like top 5 years of Hollywood. Is somewhere in there. It's maybe like number 2 or 3. So that is the film we will be doing today, Wizard of Oz. So kicking things off with the introduction provided to us by IMDb. Young Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto are swept away by a tornado from their Kansas farm to the magical land of Oz and embark on a quest with 3 new friends to see the wizard who can return her to her home and fulfill the others' wishes. Storyline. When a tornado rips through Kansas, Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto are whisked away from their house to the magical land of Oz. They follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City to meet the wizard, and on the way they meet a scarecrow who wants a brain, a tin man who wants a heart, and a cowardly lion who wants courage. The wizard asks them to bring him the Wicked Witch of the West's broom to earn his help. This movie is directed by Academy Award winner Victor Fleming, known for his work on Gone with the Wind, well, the aforementioned Gone with the Wind, which is number 6 on the AFI Top 100, so look for that. Look for that movie in a future episode. He also directed Captains Courageous in 1937 and Test Pilot in 1938. The movie was also directed by Academy Award nominated director King Vidor. Vidor or Vidor. It's my understanding that King Vidor directed the black and white scenes in the beginning and the end of the film, and that Victor Fleming was in charge of the color scenes. I think that was a clue on Jeopardy. Shout out to Jeopardy. Shout out to Ken Jennings. I can't wait to be a contestant on. Can't wait to be a contestant on Jeopardy. Can't wait to have Ken Jennings on the podcast one day. Well, King Vidor, he is known for directing War and Peace, 1956, Show People in 1928, Hallelujah in 1929, and The Wedding Night in 1935. The movie was written by Noel Langley, Florence Ryerson, and Edgar Allan Woolf. Noel Langley is known for his work on Snow White and the Three Stooges in 1961. I've definitely got to check that one out. A Christmas Carol in 1951, and The Pickwick Papers in 1952. Florence Ryerson is known for his work on The Return of Dr. Fu Manchu, 1930. Sounds semi-problematic. Everybody Sing in 1938, and Tough Guy, 1936. Edgar Allan Woolf is known for his work on The Night is Young in 1935. He also worked on Everybody Sing in 1938 and Tough Guy in 1936. So it looks like Edgar Allan Woolf and Florence Ryerson collaborated on a few projects way back when. The movie stars Academy Award nominated actress Judy Garland as Dorothy Gale. She's known for playing Vicky Lester in A Star is Born, the 1954 version. Esther Smith in Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944. And Irene Hoffman in Judgment in Nuremberg, 1961. The movie stars Academy Award nominated actor Frank Morgan, who I think has a phenomenal last name. And I think Lee from Lights Camera Rant would agree. big shout out to Lights Camera Rant. You're doing great things. I can't wait to be on Lights Camera Rant again. I can't wait to have you here on Cobbs Corner again when we do Toy Story. So big shout out, big salute to, got me messing up my microphone. big salute to you, Lee, and to the Lights Camera Rant fandom. Frank Morgan, Academy Award nominated actor, as Professor Marvel, although I feel like he has like 15 different roles in this movie. He plays Professor Marvel. He plays like a few of the people in the Emerald City. Like he plays like the guard. I think he plays like the stagecoach driver when they're at the Emerald City. He definitely plays Professor Marvel, and he plays the actual Wizard of Oz as well. So yes, but for the purpose of this intro, we're just going to say he looks like he portrayed Professor Marvel. And he has also played Hugo Matuskik in The Shop Around the Corner, 1940. Sam Griggs in The Cockeyed Miracle, 1946. And the Pirate in Tortilla Flat, 1942. Last but not least, this movie stars Ray Bolger, a Primetime Emmy nominated actor. Ray Bolger as Hunk. Ray Bolger is known for playing Jack Donahue in Look for the Silver Lining, 1949. Barnaby Barnacle in Babes in Toyland, 1961. And Bunny Billings in Sunny, 1941. Without any further ado, let's go to Cobbs Corner. So like I said, this movie has been adapted and readapted multiple times over the course of the past, this is 86 years. The movie came out 86 years ago, and in the years since, it has spawned so many like television series and spin-offs and reboots. Like The Wiz is technically a reboot of the Wizard of Oz. The movie starts out in black and white, and it starts out like we see how Dorothy Gale, she is kind of a country, well, I guess, I don't know if this is considered a derogatory term or not, but a country girl, a farm girl. We'll say farm girl from Kansas. She's living with her aunt and uncle, and she dreams of getting out of Kansas. Like there's the iconic Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which for the longest time I did not know that song was from this movie. I did not really watch this movie growing up. I was too busy watching The Wiz. I've maybe seen this movie 5 times in total over the course of my life. I maybe saw it once as a kid. Then once when I was in Micronesia, I showed it to my students in my elective. And so I watched it twice. Once by myself. I watched it first before I showed it to them, and then I watched it with my students, and then so that's 3 times. And the 4th time was in preparation for this podcast. So yeah, I've only seen this movie about 4 times, and the iconic Somewhere Over the Rainbow that I'm not even gonna attempt to replicate. If I start singing, then everybody will log off for this podcast. Please don't go. Please stay. But yeah, we see how she just dreams of getting off of that farm, and she's just sort of in this mindset of like, life can be so much more exciting. The grass can be so much greener on the other side, and she dreams of going on an adventure, and so. Now, of course, it being Kansas, that is tornado country, and big shout out to any and all listeners that I have in Kansas, in the Midwest, in Oklahoma, in the tornado areas. Big salute to the Midwest, and my heart goes out to anyone and everyone who has been negatively affected by the wildfires in California, the tornadoes that we've had. I think we had tornadoes hit the Midwest either last year or year before last. So yeah, my heart goes out to you guys. And tornado's about to hit. So tornado's about to hit their house, and the neighborhood, not the evil witch, but I can't think of her name, but it's like the same actress who plays the evil witch. She threatens to like have Toto taken away because apparently Toto, who's Dorothy's dog, bit her or whatever. So like the first couple of minutes, we kind of are introduced to our cast of characters, and who we will actually see more of in a different reality, which I'll get to in a second. The tornado hits, and Dorothy ends up getting locked out of the cellar, ends up having to hide in her room, and she ends up getting knocked unconscious, but not before seeing the mean lady from the town riding her bicycle in the tornado, and then she actually turns into the Wicked Witch. She turns into a witch on her broom, and then the house finally hits the ground. Dorothy wakes up, but then when she opens the door, it's in color. And I think that's very, very intentional with how her real reality, her home in Kansas, the farm in Kansas, how that was all in black and white, and how now that she's stepping into the land of Oz, stepping into the land of Oz, now it's all in color. And she is greeted by Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, I want to say, because her house has apparently landed on the Wicked Witch of the East. And I'm not gonna go too deep into the reimagining of like the Wicked Witch as a sympathetic villain, and that's all in the movie Wicked, which I may do an episode on later on. But essentially, she lands in Munchkin Land, and the Munchkins, they embrace her, they celebrate her, like, oh, it's like, oh, the evil witch is dead, Dorothy is our hero, and now she's wearing the ruby slippers, which it's my understanding that in the book they were silver slippers, not ruby slippers. And there's a whole like 15-foot like stagecoach ride throughout Munchkin Land, and she's surrounded by a bunch of little people, and she's properly thanked by the Lullaby League and the Lollipop Guild. And so Dorothy tells Glinda that like she wants to go home, and Glinda tells her to follow the yellow brick road, which of course breaks into song. It's like in their contract, they gotta break into song every 10 minutes. So she follows the yellow brick road, and she's off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, whatever it is because I don't know, guys. But yeah, she's off to see the wizard, and she runs into a scarecrow. She runs into a scarecrow who apparently doesn't have a brain. Runs into a scarecrow who doesn't have a brain, and I think he has his own musical number, and Dorothy tells the scarecrow that she's headed to go see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, whatever it is because they're off to see the wizard. And maybe this Wizard of Oz can get Dorothy home, and can get the scarecrow a brain. So they follow the yellow brick road, and they're following the yellow brick road, and they are following this yellow brick road. And then they are famished. You know what I'm saying? Like at some point we look, if we gonna be following this yellow brick road, I know it's the 1930s. I know there's no Uber Eats or like DoorDash or nothing, but I'm thinking like, you're thinking maybe we could just like maybe take a pause, and I could just like Uber Eats me some like some like Chinese food or something. Let me get like a Kung Pao chicken, maybe like a General Tso's chicken, something like, maybe like Postmates me like some Papa John's or something, or some Panda Express. And yes, I'm name dropping potential sponsors. Kidding. I don't even really eat fast food like that, so wouldn't have worked out. But yeah, in lieu of Postmates, they find apples. Healthy apples. Something that's way healthier than everything that I just said just now. And they just pick these apples off of these trees. And come to find out that the trees are alive and are tired of people picking all these apples and stuff. Like, how would you like it if somebody just walked up to you and just started picking your stuff off of your leaves? Okay, they just picking all the apples off of these trees, and then the trees start throwing apples at Dorothy, and I can't remember. I think they came alive because the Wicked Witch like put a spell on them to come alive. Yeah, I mean this movie, I do feel like it is a classic, but I do think a lot of the tropes are maybe time period specific. I get it. I'm wasn't alive in the 1930s, and I don't have as much nostalgia for this movie. I get that. I get it. That will not be the case when I review Toy Story. But they run into the Tin Man, and I'm sure we all know. I think I mentioned in the intro about what happened to the actor who played the Tin Man. Maybe it'll be in the trivia. But the Tin Man, and he's saying oil can, but his mouth is like shut, so like they can't really hear him speak. Like at first they didn't know that it was him, but then they find this oil can that just has an infinite amount of oil, because throughout the movie they just keep oiling him up. Like, what if they like run out of oil and they need to re-up? Like, what's the protocol? What's like the Land of Oz like protocol? Like, is there an oil man? Is there an oil man on the yellow brick road? Victor Fleming, I want to know, man. That's what I've been asking myself the whole time I'm watching this movie. So they oil my man up. They oil up the Tin Man, and then he starts doing his little dance, doing his little Michael Jackson movements on us. Like he literally just like leans over to one side and then leans over to the other side. And then he just starts like making a beat, and then smoke comes out of his head. So he has his little song, and then come to find out that the guy who made him forgot to put a heart. So he's got a brain. He just doesn't have a heart. And then Dorothy, tells him, hey, well, I'm trying to get home. Well, maybe you can come with us. We're going to see the wizard. Maybe he can get me home. Maybe he can get the Scarecrow a brain. Maybe he can get you a heart. All right? So let's go see the wizard. Let's go off to see the wizard. The wonderful Wizard of Oz. Whatever whiz is, because we're off to see the wizard. The wonderful Wizard of Oz. But then they end up walking through the forest and end up, scared of a bunch of like animals that are not indigenous to the forest. Okay, well, one is, they, going through the forest, and they start saying like, and they start freaking out about like lions, tigers, and bears. Only one of those animals is actually found in forests. Let's lions are more indigenous to like the savanna areas in like Africa. Same goes for tigers. Tigers, maybe Siberian tigers. It's Siberia. The white tigers, and Siberian tigers, maybe the Bengals. But that's like Africa. That's not like in the forest. So bears they could run into, though. Be it lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! And then they find a lion, all right, king of the jungle, who is all rah-rah, picking a fight with, Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. He's saying like, put him up, put him up. It's my best impression. And then, he threatens to attack Toto, but then Dorothy just smacks him. The funniest thing, Dorothy just like smacks him, and then come to find out that he's actually like, and come to find out that he's actually a scaredy cat. Literally, I think the way it was in The Wiz was, I feel like I'm talking more about other movies. I think in The Wiz it was Toto. I think bit the lion's paw, and then he just started. Yep, and then he had just like started crying and it's like he bit my paw. And Dorothy essentially says to the cowardly lions, like, you should be ashamed of yourself. You were scaring us all, and you were gonna you tried to hit Toto. He's like, I wasn't going to. So yeah, he admits that he has no courage, that he's not very brave. He just puts on a facade. He's all rah rah. He's not the guy you got to worry about. You got to be aware of the quiet ones. Yeah, you got to be aware of the ones who don't run their mouths, who are slow to speak. They're the ones you got to worry about. But the ones who run their mouth, the ones who got podcasts like me, y'all don't got to worry about me. Y'all do not have to worry about me. I am, just gonna turn on this microphone and this camera. We just going a mile a minute. But yeah, he's essentially all show and no go. And so naturally, of course, he wants to join the posse, and now he's off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, the wonderful wizard because I don't know the lyrics. I should have read the lyrics before I started recording this podcast, and too late. So they're all headed to the Emerald City. And then the Wicked Witch puts a poppy field between them and the Emerald City. You can see the Emerald City. It's almost like how you can see New York City. You can see the island of Manhattan, I think from the George Washington Bridge, or like from Hoboken, New Jersey, or Edgewater, New Jersey. But you can see New York City off in the distance. You can see the Emerald City. But instead of a river, there's a poppy field. And these poppies, they eventually make everybody sleepy for some reason. So clearly this movie was not written or directed by... Well, clearly Victor Fleming did not consult any botanists or biologists or chemists, because botanists and scientists, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Do poppies have any sleeping properties? I'm pretty sure this doesn't actually happen in real life. I'm pretty sure poppies don't put you to sleep. But anyway, that's what happens in the movie. They're all asleep. And then Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, she casts a spell for it to snow on them. And now that it's snowing, now everybody's cold and everybody wakes up. I've also heard that they used actual asbestos. They used asbestos for the snow. They didn't use real snow. They used asbestos. So they used asbestos for the snow. And yeah, we all know asbestos is not good, but they wake up and then they pull out again the oil can, because apparently off screen there was the oil man who just gave them a fresh oil can and they paid for it somehow. I don't know. This has been racking my mind all day, is how are they getting a re-up on this oil? Does this oil can just never ending? Does it never run out? Let me know your theories in the comments down below. So they oil up the Tin Man because he's frozen. He is a statue. But then they oil him up, and then he starts being able to pop lock again. Just yeah. If you are listening to this on Spotify, you can't see my amazing, superb dance moves. Yeah. What? Tin Man ain't got nothing on me. Okay. All right, dance break over. So they knock on the door, and Guess who answers? Professor Marvel. It is Professor Marvel. Frank Morgan, like I said, he was very, very busy on set. He has like 15 different roles on... He had 15 different roles in one movie, and he eventually lets them in. That once they're in the Emerald City, I mean, they really took this title literally. You know, everything's literally green in this city. Everything is green. You know, everyone gets a free makeover. You know, the Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Judy. Everyone gets like a free makeover. Dorothy, not Judy, gets a free, you know, manicure. You know, get free manicure, pedicure. You know, Dorothy gets her hair done, and the Lion sings some song about him being king of the jungle. And you know, once they finally go before the Wizard of Oz, you know, it's all the screen with the projection and the fire and the theatrics. He tells them to go and get the broom from the Wicked Witch of the West. So then they have to go to the witch's castle, and they disguise themselves as guards, and the guards are singing like some song, like it's similar to, if any of you have seen Wreck-It Ralph, the like "Oh Rio, oh Rio, oh Rio, oh Rio, oh." So like the guards are singing some song that's like similar to that. And after a brief soiree with the flying monkeys, the flying monkeys, they come and they try to stop Dorothy and them, and then they get to the castle. They come face to face with the Wicked Witch of the West, and after the Wicked Witch tries to set the Scarecrow on fire, Dorothy throws some water at her, and come to find out that she's allergic to water, and that now she's melting. I'm melting. What a world. What a world. And they take the broom, and they hightail it back to the Emerald City, and they tell Mr. Wiz, like, hey, yo, Mr. Wiz, Wizard of Oz. Bear with me. They take it back to the Wizard of Oz, and they tell him, here, we got it. We got the broom. And then Toto walks over to a curtain and starts pulling back the curtain. And the Wiz, he even says, like, do not worry. He says, do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And then they go over to him, and they come to realize that the Wizard of Oz is actually a fraud. Who knew? And he's also played by Frank Morgan. He's also Professor Marvel. What? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, like I said earlier, everyone in the Land of Oz, sans Glinda, has a real-world equivalent. Like, the Scarecrow, the Lion, Tin Man, and the Scarecrow are based on, I guess, Dorothy's 3 cousins on the farm. The Wicked Witch of the West is based on the lady from Kansas who wanted to take away Toto. The Wizard of Oz is based on Professor Marvel. So yeah, and then I think the real pivotal scene in the movie is when they're now face to face with the Wizard of Oz, and Scarecrow wants a brain, Lion wants courage, Tin Man wants a heart. And the Wizard tells them that what they wanted, they always had. You know, he ends up naming the Tin Man like a philanthropist. He gives the, you know, he tells the Scarecrow, he gives him like a degree or something. And then the Scarecrow says some inaccurate Pythagorean theorem. He gives the Lion courage, and then Glinda shows up and tells Dorothy that she could always go home. As long as she had those ruby slippers on, she could have gone home the whole time. But then I think the moral of the story is that, like, she had to go through that journey. She wouldn't have been able to believe that what she wanted, that everything that she wanted, she already had. And a lot of times we have those days where it may seem like the grass is greener on the other side. It may seem like I want this fantasy. I want, to be at the top. I want to be king of the hill. I want all these other things that I don't have right now. But the reality is that infantilization, with that, so the reality is, like, with that infantilization, like, you could potentially already have everything that you want. Maybe don't focus so much on what you don't have and what you want to attain, and be able to kind of meet yourself where you are. And Dorothy makes it home, and then she wakes up and she says how, like, now apparently she was in a very long, like, dream sequence, although she wakes up and it seems like no time has passed at all. It's almost like a Back to the Future sort of moment. She wakes up in the real world, and look who's there to greet her is her aunt and her uncle, her three cousins, and Professor Marvel. Everybody's there. She says, like, oh, I just woke up from the strangest dream, and all of you were there. Yeah. So that's kind of a nod to this movie's theme of realizing that, again, everyone who was in Oz was also at home. A lot of times, like, what you may want or an experience that you think is going to happen it's going to happen somewhere else, that same experience can happen right where you are. And home is, and it doesn't matter location wise, as long as you are with the ones that you love, as long as you're surrounded by loved ones, anything can happen. Those same experiences that you want to have in a different location, you can have those same experiences at home, as long as you're surrounded by friends and family. And I think the movie deals with themes of family and finding your chosen family, because when Dorothy was in Oz, her chosen family became the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. They became her chosen family, who turns out were just parallels for her real life family. So being able to accept where you are, like, I think this what I'm not saying that as an individual you should not have goals and dreams and aspirations. I mean, we all do, myself included. We all have our goals and our dreams and our aspirations in life, and that's all good. That's got its place. But this movie is a reminder to never lose sight of where you are. Almost think back to the scenes in Empire Strikes Back between Luke and Yoda, where Yoda says how, like, oh, Luke, you were always looking to the horizon, always focused on, like, what's beyond, and what tomorrow will bring. Never focused on the present. Never focused on where he's never been focused on where he was, what he was doing currently. So this movie is a reminder to never lose sight of where you are right now. And regardless of who you are, age, race, gender, where you're listening from, you are amazing. You have value. You matter. I'm going to use this platform to, reach out to. I want to get this platform out to as many people as possible. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but you matter. You are amazing. All right, you have potential. You have value. And do not compare yourself. Do not compare your current situation to what you see on social media, what you see on TV, to an extent what you see in these movies, because the reality is that the Land of Oz is a fantasy. It doesn't exist. Eventually Dorothy had to wake up to reality and accept the fact that, even in this fantasy, you'll be surrounded by the same people. And again, it's a fantasy. What's in the real world is also in your made-up fantasy. Do not get too caught up in that fantasy and in your goals. Don't think like, oh, I'll finally be able to love myself. I'll finally have value. I'll finally feel like I matter to the world or to people in general. I'll finally feel like I have value if I achieve this amount of money, or if I drive this car, or live in this city, and have this kind of house, or own a mansion, or whatever the material possessions may be. Like the reality is that we should all, wherever we are in our journey that we call life, and the fact is that yes, life is a journey, and I believe that we should all do the work every single day to better ourselves. And you should want better for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But also be able to accept who you are at this particular moment in your life. Whenever you're listening to this episode, it could be in the year of our Lord 2025. You could be listening to this 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whenever you're listening to this, and wherever you're listening from. Be able to love yourself and appreciate yourself and say, I matter, I have value, regardless of where you are in this journey that we call life. And remember that all that glitters is not gold. Contrary to what Smash Mouth said, all that glitters is not gold. And, you might, once you've attained that level of like status or whatever that dream is that you have, just remember that, you're still going to wake up one day and reality is going to hit you. None of us can escape the real world. All right. Even with Meta and Oculus, that's all virtual reality. None of that's real. What you see on social media, what you see on the internet, it's not 100% real. So I think this movie deals with themes of reality. Be able to wake up to reality. Never lose sight of it. Be able to love yourself. How else are you going to be able to love anyone else if you don't love yourself first? If you don't believe in yourself first? Believe in yourself and love yourself, and be able to say, I'm amazing, I matter, I have value, even though I have goals, I have dreams, I have aspirations. But I'm also in this moment, in the present, while I'm still here. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to do all that I can for myself, not for anyone else. I'm going to do as much good as I can in this life while I'm here, because tomorrow's not promised. 5 years from now, it's not promised. I might be alive 5 years from now, but I don't know if I'm gonna be where I say that where I say that I want to be 5-10 years from now. What do I have to do today to make sure that I get there? That's what this movie that's what this movie deals with. Reality. So I would say this movie is 100% worth a watch. It's worth a rewatch. It's worthy of its number 10 spot on the AFI Top 100. And I highly recommend that everybody go and check this movie out if you have not already. And in fact, this movie is so great that it's even warranted an additional segment on this episode of Cobbs Corner. All right? Now that we're done talking about The Wizard of Oz, let's go talk about The Wizard of Oz Plus for an extra $19.95 plus shipment handling. The conversation continues on Patreon. Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boy. Kidding. On to The Wizard of Oz Plus. Okay, so Wizard of Oz Plus. In total, this movie won 2 Oscars, and it had a total of 15 award wins and 15 nominations total from other award shows. 15 wins and 15 nominations total, 2 of which were Oscar wins. The movie was nominated for Best Picture at the 1940 Academy Awards. It lost to Gone with the Wind, which is again number 6 on the AFI Top 100. I'm telling y'all, 1939 was the year. All right, part of me wishes I was there. Part of me wishes I was alive to see this movie in theaters for the first time. I can only imagine what it was like seeing The Land of Oz. Yeah, it looks dated, almost a century later, but I can only imagine what it must have been like to see The Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind in theaters for the first time in 1939. It's probably spectacular. The movie was also nominated for Best Art Direction. Well, Cedric Gibbons and William H. Horning were nominated for Best Art Direction. They lost to Lyle R. Wheeler for his work on, you guessed it, Gone with the Wind. The movie was also nominated A. Arnold Gillespie and Douglas Sheeran for photographic and sound respectively were nominated for the Oscar for Best Special Effects. They lost to Fred Surson and Edmund H. Hansen for photographic and sound respectively for their work on The Rains Came. The Rains Came, which is not on the AFI Top 100. I will have to check that one out, though. Sounds like that movie must have probably came in at like 102, 103. It didn't make the Top 100. Now, the movie did win Best Original Song for the song Over the Rainbow, which was composed by Harold Arlen, who did the music, and E.Y. Harburg, who did the lyrics. So, Over the Rainbow. Yeah, the somewhere over the rainbow, I don't know the rest. Somewhere Oscar win. Yes. No. I was gonna say something, but I'll save it for a future episode. Tune into my 100th episode, everybody. Tune into episode 100. Got a surprise for y'all. The movie also won the Oscar for Best Music Original Score. The score was composed by Herbert Stothart. Yeah, Stothart. Stothart. Yep. Best Music Original Score. So, looks like it won 2 Oscars, and then it was nominated for 3 other Oscars. So, on to trivia. Judy Garland found it difficult to be afraid of Margaret Hamilton because she was such a nice lady off camera. You know, it's called acting, but I guess Margaret Hamilton was the name of the actress who played the Wicked Witch of the West. I feel like maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not a surprise, because I think even the actor who played Nate Jacobs on the show Euphoria, which I think season 3 is coming soon, I feel like people have said that he's a nice guy in real life. I think he was on Hot Ones once, but he plays such a like crazy character. But yeah, it's called acting. And I think you'd be surprised at the amount of actors who will play villains, but then you'll hear reports that like, oh, they're actually like the nicest. Like, oh, so-and-so is like the nicest guy in real life. He's very, kind and caring and, so yeah. I'm surprised, but I'm also not surprised. Many shots were trimmed down or edited out of the film because they were too intense for families and children. In particular, one deleted shot shows the tornado completely enveloping the farmhouse. Also, later in the film, a lot of Wicked Witch of the West's scenes were either trimmed or deleted entirely, as Margaret Hamilton's performance was thought to be too frightening for audiences. Yep, it was 1939. There was a lot of gatekeeping in Hollywood. And I think I talked about this in my Citizen Kane review about how Citizen Kane was controversial in... I'm trying to think what year that came out. I know that movie came out in like the early 1940s. I forget the exact year. But I know that movie, they had... Orson Welles did not put any opening credits at the start of that film. And that was controversial at that time. So when Citizen Kane was almost universally booed at the Oscars... like, it was not an instant classic. And it's also my understanding that Hollywood was very conservative in terms of what was allowed, what wasn't allowed. Profanity was, like, not tolerated. I think even I Love Lucy, I don't think I've talked about this on this podcast before or not, but on the episodes of I Love Lucy, you had Lucy and her husband Ricardo, who were, I guess technically you could say that they were an interracial marriage, although Ricardo was Cuban. You never see them sleeping in the same bed together. Yeah, they're a husband and wife sleeping in two different beds. There's an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show where he's in some dream sequence, then he opens like his closet door and there's like a bunch of oranges, I think, and his wife slides down and she's wearing a top that was revealing her shoulders. That was controversial in like 1962. So I mean, we look back at it now and we think it's like ridiculous, but you got to consider 1939, they did not know what was possible. This is before TV. This is before like the big budget blockbusters, before like a lot of the CGI and a lot of the film technology that we have today. It was largely analog back then. And, really, filmmakers from that time period, they all get a medal. They all get a gold medal in my book, just because how difficult it was at that time just to make movies. So, yeah, they thought it was too frightening. You got to put yourself in the minds of, people 86 years ago. Margaret Hamilton, a lifelong fan of the Oz books, who was ecstatic when she learned the producers were considering her for a part in the film. When she phoned her agent to find out what role she was up for, her agent simply replied, "The witch. Who else?" Those Hollywood agents and their backhanded compliments. In 1898, Dorothy Lewis Gage was born to the brother and sister-in-law of Maud Gage Baum, wife of author L. Frank Baum. When little Dorothy died exactly 5 months later, Maud was heartbroken. Baum was just finishing The Wizard of Oz, and to comfort his wife, he named his heroine after Dorothy, changing her last name to Gale in his third book. Dorothy Gage was buried in Evergreen Memorial Cemetery in Bloomington, Illinois, where her grave was forgotten until 1996 when it was rediscovered. When Mickey Carroll, one of the last existing Munchkins from the movie, learned of the discovery, he was eager to replace her deteriorating grave marker with a new one created by his own monument company. The new stone was dedicated in 1997, and the children's section of the cemetery renamed the Dorothy L. Gage Memorial Garden in the hope that bereaved families would be comforted in thinking of their lost children as being with Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Wow. I mean, I think back to... I think there was a scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where Bucky is at the bar restaurant with Mr. Nakajima, and Bucky, when he was a Winter Soldier, he had killed Mr. Nakajima's son, had gotten kind of caught in the crossfires. And the bartender, who Bucky ends up going on a date with, she says how there's no word for somebody who's lost a child. If you lose your parents, you're an orphan. you lose a spouse, you're a widow. There's no word for someone who has lost a child. You know, I mean, I can't imagine the grieving process for parents who have lost children, and my heart goes out to anyone and everyone who has lost a loved one, you know, in this life. You know, life is hard, and you know, of course, this episode is not sponsored by BetterHelp or anybody, but you know, definitely, you know, try the therapy route. You know, it's not easy to lose close family members, and I think that is great what they did. Mickey Carroll is a real one for sure. You know, one of the last surviving Munchkins, and dedicating that new stone to Dorothy, to little Dorothy. And that's interesting how Dorothy got her name, how our protagonist got her name in this movie. And well, first in the book and then in the movie. So you know, definitely big shout out to Mickey Carroll, to the Baum family, any surviving members of Elfrake Baum, you know. And yeah, I mean, you know, grief and loss, it's not easy. Last bit of trivia. The iconic ruby slippers are now at the Smithsonian Institute National Museum of American History, and so popular that the carpet in front of them has had to be replaced numerous times due to wear and tear. I feel like I have heard about that, about the slippers being in the Smithsonian. I can't remember if I've seen them at the Smithsonian, because I've been to the Smithsonian Museum, and big shout out to my listeners in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. Big shout out to all of you. That's actually one of my favorite places, one of my favorite areas to visit. I've been to Williamsburg, Alexandria, National Harbor. You know, we would always go to National Harbor on vacation. That's one of my favorite, like, areas of the country to visit. And yeah, I could definitely see them having to replace having to replace the rug, because yeah, those ruby slippers. The irony is that in the book they were actually silver, and I think Dorothy's slippers are silver in The Wiz, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a creative liberty that they took creative liberty that Victor Fleming took in creating the movie. So, of course, little wear and tear. Like, yeah, if I were one of the museum curators, I would have told y'all, back up off this rug. Like, no, we're gonna have 5 at a time. Y'all get 5 minutes. All right, then we gotta clean off this rug. I am tired of having to replace these rugs all the time, man. Come on, what's wrong with y'all? All out here just back and forth, man. Tired of having to replace this rug. All right, user review. Wizard of Oz, 1939. 10 out of 10 stars. This review was published on May the 4th, 2013. Perhaps the most well-known and watched film in history. This film predates my birth by 19 years, so I've seen it as a child when it was an annual event on network TV, stretched out to hours in length. Believably due to commercials, and maybe not so believably today due to the network hosting and talking about the film a little during breaks. Today at age 55, when it shows up on Turner Classic Movies, even though I have in possession the deluxe Wizard of Oz DVD set and museum in a box, I'll still stop and watch it from whatever point I catch it to the end. Having the advantage of having seen it at all ages, I can truly say that it has enough fantasy and whimsy and spectacle to keep the interest of children without being inane so that adults cannot appreciate it too. I think in all of filmdom, only Walt Disney in Walt's time was with his animated features, and Pixar in modern times have been able to strike that balance. Even Star Wars has lost a step or two in the 36 years since its release. Wizard of Oz has the universal themes of the value of friendship and family, of how many of us have strengths and virtues inside of us we'll never believe we have until it's tested, and how many powerful people are literally all hot air. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain is practically a slogan of American politics. Whoo! We are stepping on some toes. I should have proofread this. I really should have proofread this user review. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain is practically a slogan of American politics as I am writing this in the year 2013. Then there is a beautiful Judy Garland when her exterior still matched her voice. Before the studio system chewed her up and literally spit her out, she was never more lovely than she is right here. You'd never believe Billy Burke as the good witch Glinda is 55 years old. You'd never believe that Margaret Hamilton as the bad witch is only 37. I remember seeing her on a daytime commercial in the 1960s as a child and thinking, isn't she dead yet? There is maybe one aspect of this film that is uniquely pre-World War II. The theme of the film, never look for anything if you can't find it in your own backyard, is a motto from the isolationist years between the wars that would be left behind in a couple of years when it became apparent that the U.S. would have to confront the evil expansionist powers growing on both sides of the globe. It is perhaps a unique snapshot in time in that regard only. It also shows the best the studio system could produce in that fabled year of 1939 when it was at the height of its power. Forgive me for yammering on about a film that has been reviewed hundreds of times, but this one will always have a special place in my heart and my memory. This review provided to us via IMDb via user capital A, LS, capital E, X, capital G, AL. Al's X Gal. I mean, yeah, 10 out of 10 stars. You know, I hadn't even thought about the pre-World War II implications. I mean, you know, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Whew. You know, I don't really want to get too deep into the politics of it, but you know, I mean, here we are 12 years later, and yeah, I feel like there's a lot of those pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Whoo, man. Yeah, that is a slogan that hits different today. And the fact that a lot of powerful people are really just full of hot air. I mean, I'm not going to say the word that I would like, the word that, you know, a lot of us are thinking, because this is a family-friendly program. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of, you know, rich and powerful people that are really just full of it. So, but this whole, I mean, yeah, the pre-World War II isolationist sentiment, I can definitely see that. Now, hearing that out loud, I can now I can see that sort of sentiment of stay out of, you know, foreign conflicts, and like, if you can't find it, let's just say, never look for anything if you can't find it in your own backyard. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a motto, of course, of the isolationist years. You know, for the historians listening, the time between, I want to say 1920 and 1941, like after we got out of World War I, and then there was the Roaring Twenties. In 1939, we were still in the Great Depression. There was in 1929 the stock market crash, and then the Great Depression in the 1930s. Of course, Hollywood was at its peak, though. This was like the golden age of Hollywood. Like I said, this was when we got the Wizard of Oz's, the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington's, the Gone with the Winds, the Citizen Kanes. So this was the golden age of Hollywood, but we were not in World War II just yet. We joined World War II late. We joined World War II in 1941, and the war had already been going on for 2 years at that point. Like, actually, 1939, the year this movie came out, was the year that World War II had officially begun. 1937 was when the Marco Polo Bridge incident happened, and Japan invaded China, so that's when the war started in the East. The Western front of the war started in 1939 after Hitler invaded Poland. So for America, this was still 2 years before we entered World War II. This was still pre-World War II of stay out of other folks' conflicts, you know. But yeah, this is definitely a great review left to us by a user on IMDb. The official IMDb rating for this film is 8.1 out of 10 stars. I agree. The Letterboxd score is 4 out of 5 stars. I think the disadvantage for me is that I don't have hardly any nostalgia for this movie because I'm not old enough to a point where I watched this movie on television as a kid and as a teenager and as an adult. Not the same way that I have like nostalgia for movies like The Lorax, The Incredibles for sure, which, you know, I'm probably gonna touch on these movies in future episodes. You know, The Incredibles, which I don't think is a kids movie at all. I mean, I saw that movie when I was 3, and I've seen it a million times. I watched a million YouTube videos about it. You know, Shrek, which I've done audio commentaries for all 4 Shreks. You know, the Shrek franchise, Toy Story franchise. You know, these are the movies that I have nostalgia for because I watched them as a kid, and I still watch them occasionally now as an adult. So I think if I were, say, 50 years older, you know, I'm 24 years old right now as of the recording of this episode. If I were 74, 75 years old, maybe I'd have a bit more nostalgia for this movie. Same goes for other movies on this list. I think every movie on this list came out before I was born. So, but yeah, you know, like I said, this movie deserves its number 10 spot on the AFI Top 100. The movie was officially released on August 25th, 1939, here in the United States. The movie is entirely in English. Its Spanish title is El Mago de Oz. I'm not exactly sure what that directly translates to, but shout out to my listeners in any and all Spanish-speaking countries. Hola. And to my listeners in Spain, Mexico, Puerto Rico. I am going to the Dominican Republic in August, so to my listeners in the DR, what's up? And yeah, El Mago de Oz. I'm not sure if Mago means wizard or not, but filming locations. The movie was filmed at Stage 28 Sony Picture Studios, 10202 West Washington Boulevard, Culver City, California. That's where the Witch's Castle Drawbridge and the Wash and Brush Up Company, Witch's Entrance Hall, Witch's Tower Room, and the Yellow Brick Road montage song all filmed at Stage 28. Big shout out to Sony Picture Studios. Can't wait to get a tour of that wonderful studio that you guys have. Sony Pictures, Paramount. The production company was Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM, Ars Gracia Artis, Art for Art's Sake, or as Bob Lament expanded upon that slogan when we did North by Northwest. Big shout out to Bob Lament. Can't wait to do, I think we're doing like Alfred Hitchcock trifecta. We did North by Northwest. At some point I'm gonna have Bob Lament back on the podcast for, I think, Vertigo and Rear Window. I think those are the other two. Yeah, but yeah, it's going to be 2 more Hitchcock movies. So, Ars Gracia Artis, Art for Art's Sake, and making money. That's on the back of the logo. They didn't show that part. The movie had an estimated budget of $2,777,000, which translates to about $64 million in 2025. The movie had... That was its budget. Its gross domestic box office was gross domestic box office haul, if I can barely speak, was $24,668,669, which translates to about $568 million in 2025. And that its gross worldwide, it made about another $1 million worldwide. Worldwide, it made $25,637,669, which translates to about $590 million in 2025. Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter score 98%, audience score 89%. I'm kind of with the critics on this one. 98%. Critics' consensus, an absolute masterpiece whose groundbreaking visuals and deft storytelling are still every bit as resonant. The Wizard of Oz is a must-see film for young and old. Couldn't have said it better myself. Where to watch? You can watch The Wizard of Oz with a subscription on Max, rent it on Fandango at home, or buy it on Fandango at home. But of course, I live in 2005, and I watched The Wizard of Oz on DVD. As will be the case with a couple of the films on this list. Watched it on DVD because I'm living in the 2000s. But that is all for today's review of The Wizard of Oz. If you like what you heard today, then don't forget to give this podcast a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And feel free to leave this podcast a written review on Apple Podcasts as well. To my YouTube audience, make sure that you like this video, share it, subscribe, and click that bell so you get notified whenever I upload new episodes. If you want to stay up to date on all things Cobbs Corner, then you need to follow me on Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and TikTok. All of that information is in the show notes below. If you made it to the end of this episode, I greatly appreciate it. And click the video on the screen right now to listen to my review of Do the Right Thing that I did with Preston and Easy Blues. And as always, I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.